A way too early top 25 college football rankings for 2026 are out. Apologies to those who think the SEC is dead. They're not.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. And, of course, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and now on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Today's episode brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. All right, we have the national championship in the books. We close the doors on the 2026 college football season, but the folks over at On3, they were looking for some Monday content yesterday, and they put out a way too early college football top 25 teams for 2026. Of course, the transfer portal closed on Friday. In terms of guys wanting to enter the portal, obviously there's still a ton of people still in the portal. We'll get you caught up with the latest moves in the SEC in just a little bit. But let's take a look at On3, their collective college football experts, which include Chris Lowe, Brett McMurphy, Pete Nakos, JD Pickell, Andy Staples, Ari Wasserman. They all put together their preseason early, way too early, top 25 ballots. Let's take a look at it. And 9, count them, 9 SEC teams in their way too early top 25 rankings. So anybody wanting to tell you, oh, the SEC's down, the SEC stinks, the SEC is dead, the Big Ten dominates them, 9 teams. Let's run through it. Of course, Ohio State is their preseason number 1 team. It's Georgia at 2, Texas at 3. So some of these kind of differ. I think I saw Yahoo or one of them, their preseason rankings they put out, they had Texas at number 1. On3 guys going with Ohio State, Georgia at number 2. I don't think you can go wrong with any of those groupings. They got Notre Dame at 4, Indiana at 5. So pretty interesting that Indiana at 5 and Miami at 9, the two teams who played for the national championship last night. Texas A&M coming at number 8. They were a playoff team last year. Oklahoma at 10. Some of our guys in our Locked On SEC Discord channel, we were talking about this, and they were saying, Oklahoma, it's a little high for Oklahoma to be preseason top 10. LSU coming in at number 12. Keep in mind, LSU was nowhere near the top 25 rankings at the end of the season, but they jump in here because of what Lane Kiffin did. And then Ole Miss, they fall all the way down to 15, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm assuming they're basing this off of they think Trinidad Chambliss isn't going to play another year. Alabama all the way at 17. When's the last time you saw Alabama projected as a number 17 team to open up a season? Again, this is their way too early top 25. And then rounding out the top 25, Tennessee at number 20, probably a good spot for them. But how about Florida at number 24? They think the Florida Gators are going to take a big step forward, I guess, into the season with John Sumrall there. So let's kind of run through some of what they had to write at On3, and we'll see if we agree with it or not. The Ohio State write-up, they got 3 first-place votes. They cite Julian Sand returning at quarterback, Jeremiah Smith at wide receiver. Keep in mind he was a true sophomore this year, so he has to play another year of college football. And then their running back, Bo Jackson, no relation, rushed for 1,000 yards and earned true freshman All-America honors. So they bring back a lot of their big weapons at Ohio State. Again, I just assume most people are going to give Ohio State the benefit of the doubt, make them their preseason number 1. Here's what they had to say about Georgia. They said Pete Nakos, this was Pete Nakos, Kirby Smart continues to retool and has Georgia in the college football playoff picture. He will return quarterback Gunnar Stockton, who went 12-2 in his first full season as starter. Stockton had his moments where it was clear he was elevating the Bulldog offense, notably against Tennessee and against Texas. He'll have a few new weapons around him with Georgia Tech wide receiver Isaiah Canyon and Kentucky running back Dante Dowdell to go with Nate Frazier and Chauncey Bowens both announcing their return to the backfield. Smart's program returns linebacker Chris Cole, who led Georgia with 4.5 sacks as well. So I agree. I think people are going to be very high on Georgia. I'm going to back off a little bit probably. We'll see what happens throughout the spring ball and all that. But Georgia, I've picked them the last 2 years to win the national championship, win the SEC. Now, they did win the SEC, but, it's like, okay, you win the SEC, but then you go and fall flat in the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame last year, against Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl this year. So we'll see. Maybe I back off a little bit on the Georgia hype, just in terms of picking them as a preseason national champion again for a third year in a row. They got number 3 Texas, and here's what they say. Ari Wasserman said, people got annoyed with the Arch Manning hype heading into 2024, but with the way it turned around, it's hard to blame them. If you watch Manning play down the stretch of the season and look at what the Longhorns are returning and adding, it's hard for the hype train to not leave the station yet again. Manning, incoming receiver transfer Cam Coleman from Auburn, and elite level pass rusher Colin Simmons returning. It's hard to envision a world where Texas isn't very good. Yes, look, everybody wants to harp on Texas and feel like, welcome to the SEC. You had that first good year where you got to the SEC title game in year 1, played a tougher schedule this year. Reality set in. Again, if you were dismissing Texas after that year 2 in the SEC, get ready to welcome them back, as they are going to be a factor this year. How about coming at number 8, Texas A&M? Pete Nako says, it is hard not to get excited about what A&M could look like this year. Starting quarterback Marcel Reed is back, and he's only expected to improve. They also add Alabama transfer receiver Isaiah Horton. That's with Mario Craver returning too. Mike Elko went all in on adding talent in the front 7 through the portal, picking up Northwestern's Anto Saka, San Diego State's Ryan Henderson. With OC Colin Klein leaving for Kansas State, this offseason will be critical to ensure Reed continues his development. Yeah, that's what I thought was so interesting, is them staying in-house with both OC and DC hires, promoting from within rather than going out and getting someone elsewhere. That will be very interesting to see how that plays out for Texas A&M. Coming at number 10, it is the Oklahoma Sooners. And here's what J.D. Pickell says. He says, 2025 verified that Brent Venables has the chops as a head coach in the SEC. His defense is going to be something we can depend on being consistently elite in Norman. The excitement with Oklahoma, though, is on the offensive side of the ball. John Mateer, when he was healthy, the offense gave OU a chance to hang with anybody in the country. If the Sooners could run the ball more effectively this year, they're going to be back in the CFP and a dark horse title contender. So Oklahoma at number 10, like we said, may seem a little bit high, but they bring back a lot, and there's going to be a lot of hype there. How about number 12? They've got LSU, and here's Andy Staples. He said, look, when you hire Lane Kiffin, you get the circus, but you also get a portal-heavy roster that will produce results quickly. And quarterback Sam Levitt was the biggest prize in the transfer portal this offseason. You had cornerback Fahim Delane, younger brother of Mansour Delane, coming over. Tigers aren't done yet, still adding in the portal, and also retained some key players, including Trey'Dez Green, who we think is going to be that big red zone threat for Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss. So, LSU at number 12. I understand some people might jump at that and go, whoa, that's a pretty high jump for a team that was unranked. You got to consider, look, Lane Kiffin's the villain. You may not like him, but he wins games, and he coaches good football, and he and Charlie Weiss together. Look at what Charlie Weiss did with that offense throughout the playoff with Ole Miss. It got better and better with Trinidad Chambliss. So, again, that's why LSU, again, if you want to put LSU a little bit lower, you want to put them 15, 16, something like that, I get it. But go look at all the pieces they had in the portal with what they got to return. With Weeks back at linebacker, I can understand why they moved LSU that high. How about coming in number 15? It is the Ole Miss Rebels and Pete Golding. And here's what Pete Nako said. One of the biggest storylines of the offseason will be the Trinidad Chambliss eligibility lawsuit. Star quarterback's eligibility will have a major impact on how this season plays out. But with Kewan Lacey back, arguably one of the sport's top 5 players, the Rebels will compete for a CFP bid once again. Pete Golding did not miss a beat in adding portal talent following Lane Kiffin's departure, added over 20 players through free agency. Wide receiver Caden Lee also expected to enter the portal, but says he will return if Trinidad Chambliss is back. So I agree. To me, that is the difference maker. If Trinidad Chambliss is back and Caden Lee's back with Kewan Lacey, A lot will be made out of John David Baker as the OC. Everybody's just assuming, oh, it's just going to look the same. It's just going to be Charlie Weiss. He was a disciple of Charlie Weiss and Lane Kiffin, so he's going to be fine. It's going to be the same offense. Okay, we'll see. You gotta go put it to work. Worked at ECU. This is the SEC in a 9-game schedule. SEC got to see it at work. But if Trinidad and all those guys are back, look, 10-2 certainly in play for Ole Miss. If it's Deuce Knight, depending on how much he matures, maybe it's more an 8-4 type season, 7-5. But if Deuce Knight hits and matures quickly, again, could be much better. So I agree. But Ole Miss 15, again, I think that's a little low. I would have them a little bit higher. I'm always in the mindset, yes, you're ranking based on the next season, but there is some carryover effect. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you're carrying over a little bit of your perspective on that team from the previous season. All right, coming in number 17, it is Alabama. Ari Wasserman says, Alabama's standard is insane. Even though the Crimson Tide made the college football playoff and advanced, you'd think last year was a disaster. Ty Simpson's off to the NFL, and now it's a QB battle between Keelan Russell and Austin Mack. Though you'd normally see the Crimson Tide much higher, you know they're going to have as much talent as anyone in the country. Will it come together in a big way? Our guy Connor O'Gara at Saturday Down South, he wrote a piece that why I don't believe Alabama deserves to start as a top 10 team next year. And the big questions he points out: quarterback, struggling to run the football. I mean, there's a lot of questions there with Kalen DeBoer. He hasn't done a bad job, but obviously the standard at Alabama is much higher than what they've done. Coming at number 20, Tennessee. Ari Wasserman says, why is Tennessee in the top 25? Fair question, but Josh Heupel has shown throughout his tenure with the Vols he will overachieve. Seems unlikely Joey Aguilar will be back at quarterback, so who will play quarterback? Also, Jim Knowles takes over the defense. Typically takes more than a year for his players to fully adapt. That said, Tennessee will probably find a way to be ranked. Yeah, the other thing is he's bringing a lot of his players from Penn State, who played a lot last year. So, again, maybe you don't have that transition with Jim Knowles coming in, that maybe they hit the ground running defensively. And then lastly, they've got the Florida Gators at number 24. Wasserman said Florida may have been disappointed by not landing Lane Kiffin, but the coach they hired, John Sumrall, has never failed to reach the conference championship game as a head coach. Gators lost DJ Lagway, but they also retained running back Jaden Baugh, receiver Dallas Wilson, defensive end Jaden Woods. And so far, Sumrall's passing tests and Florida on paper should be at least solid. Who are some teams that were on the outside looking in? Well, they listed Vanderbilt like just outside their top 25, so they must have been like 26. Missouri, and the team that I would think I would put in my top 25 right now is South Carolina. And the reason for that, I get everybody's going to go Shane Beamer. Came back down to earth last year. You may not like him as a head coach. I get all that. The Kendall Briles hire, I think, is significant. Kendall Briles will have a direct effect on Lenore Sellers. And then I love what they did in the portal and adding all those different weapons on the O-line. They got some wide receiver talent and some interesting running backs. I mean, I love the Christian Clark addition from Texas. You got to run the football. You got to get back to doing what they did 2 years ago with Rocket Sanders, balanced run game and passing attack, and another year of Lenore Sellers maturing as that dual threat quarterback. I'm buying South Carolina as a preseason top 25 team. Yeah, it's super early. It is January, folks. We've got plenty of time for this to sift through, but that was just kind of my reaction. You want to put Florida in the preseason top 25? Okay, maybe I wouldn't put them there, but I would have South Carolina in there. I would flip that around. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen of the day. Coming up next, we'll get you caught up on some of the latest portal moves of the last 24 hours. That's coming your way next. Look, there's nothing like the college football or basketball season, from packed stadiums, arenas. There's nothing like being in the middle of it all. The energy, the moments you remember forever, but actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long lines and prices jumping at checkout. And that's why GameTime gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to unlock amazing college tickets and experiences in just a few taps. You open the GameTime app, you look at the upcoming games you want to go to. You're going to be surprised how fast it will be to find great seats. The app is incredibly easy to use. You'll go from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. You'll also get to see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what you're getting. The zone deals is another cool thing. You can pick the section, GameTime picks the seats, and you save even more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets for college games with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. As we continue on here, Locked On SEC, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And hey, you already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club, and you can get our show Locked On SEC with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. $5 a month, folks, or $50 for an entire year. Again, you don't have to do it, but if you want the exclusive perks, you go to lockedonsec.supercast.com. Get an ad-free version of the show and get exclusive access to our Discord chat where you can chat with our hosts, ask any questions you might have, SEC related, and we'll be right there answering for them for you. And once a week, we'll add a feature on the show. If you are an everydayer, you got questions you want to ask, put it in the chat. We will bring it up on the show. You don't want to miss that. All right, let's get to the latest portal moves that happened in the last 24 hours. Let's start over at Ole Miss as they landed Michigan State transfer running back Mekhi Frazier. He is a Texas native, heads to Ole Miss after 2 seasons at Michigan State, 2-year letter winner, played in 18 games, has 2 seasons of eligibility remaining, and rushed for over 500 yards last year, played 9 games, made 7 starts. He was sidelined 3 of their final 4 games due to injury, but a new backfield back there at Ole Miss, where obviously led by Kewan Lacey, but they're adding a bunch of pieces through the portal. And Mekhi Frazier was a guy that was high on a lot of people's lists. So another big time back there for John David Baker to work with. How about over at Auburn? They continue to add to that secondary back there. They went and added Chattanooga defensive back Kamari Todd. He was an unranked recruit in the 2025 cycle. Joined the Mocs as a true freshman, played in all 12 games as a true freshman, 50 tackles and an interception. So he will come to the SEC. Auburn also adding a recruit. This is not going to be for till 2027, but it's significant because it's the first big recruit for Alex Golesh. 3-star tight end Tank Proctor committing to Auburn, ranks as one of the top 30 tight ends in the country. So again, good for Alex Golesh, already starting to add to his recruiting class for 2027. How about Mizzou and Eli Drinkwitz? They add to their offensive line depth and getting a guy who was very highly sought after, Mississippi State right guard Zach Owens, starting right guard this past year for the Bulldogs, and now he will head to Columbia. He is a rising redshirt junior, and Eli Drinkwitz, look, they lost a bunch of players to the transfer portal trying to beef up that offensive line. They will have Ahmad Hardy, the SEC's leading rusher, back next year, so, you know, want to add the guys in front of him and create that wall to block for him. Mississippi State right guard Zach Owens heading to Mizzou. He will presumably slide right in on that offensive line for the Missouri Tigers. How about Florida? They beat out several SEC teams for a transfer tight end from New Haven, Evan Chieka, Chiecka. He 6'5", 250-pound tight end, tiny Northeast Conference school in New Haven. Going to be a big step up to the SEC. At 31 catches for 255 yards and 4 touchdowns this past season. He also visited Kentucky during his portal recruiting process and visited Alabama and LSU. So he'll have 2 years of eligibility remaining. Was named to the All Northeast Conference second team last year. So Gators, they lost Tony Livingston as well as Hayden Hansen to the portal. So adding him to their tight end room, along with Georgia Tech's Luke Harpering and James Madison's Lakota Dipre. It's a lot of new names there around the SEC. How about South Carolina? They added Big 12 wide receiver DJ Black coming over to the Gamecocks. Was at UCF, entering his final season of college eligibility, and a bit familiar with Shane Beamer. He walked on for the Gamecocks back in 2022 and had a strong showing at Limestone, led to an FBS opportunity at UCF. With the Knights, he had 22 catches for 273 yards and 2 touchdowns. A few other portal ads for you coming out yesterday. Kentucky added Southern Utah wide receiver Shane Carr, as well as South Alabama D lineman Tyler Thomas. Vanderbilt added Oklahoma State D lineman Michael Diata, and then South Carolina added a Missouri State offensive lineman that I am going to butcher like no other. We'll call him DK, his first name, and his last name is Nabugwu. We'll go with that. N-N-A-B-U-G-W-U again. Hopefully he makes a big impact and goes by the nickname DK. We'll call him that. But Anyway, a lot of different pieces added to the portal yesterday, and we'll continue to update you. Or in terms of guys who are picking their schools. Obviously, you can't go into the portal anymore, but there are still names being finalized that the paperwork was put in before the midnight deadline on Friday, but with Saturday and Sunday holiday, and then Monday was a holiday, some of that paperwork still a little bit slow to get going here. So we'll keep you up to date still over the next couple of days on any more movement in the transfer portal and some ads from around the SEC. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. When we return, CBS Sports article grading the first-year Power 4 coaches and their transfer portal classes. Tell you what grades they gave the SEC coaches coming up next. All right, diving back into it, CBS Sports had a piece up yesterday grading every first-year Power 4 coaches transfer portal class. And yes, they had guys like Eric Morris and Matt Campbell and all that, but for our purposes here on Locked On SEC, we're going to stick with just the SEC guys. We'll start with Arkansas. Priority number one for Arkansas this offseason was rebuilding a defense that gave up the 8th most points of any group in the country. And Ryan Silverfield understood the assignment. In comes 4-star linebacker Kamari House, 4-star corner Jaheim Johnson, as well as a number of other future contributors on a unit that was way below par in the SEC last season. And the Silverfield hire itself may not have been the most awe-inspiring move of the coaching carousel, but his transfer pickups give the Razorbacks the horses to compete against their conference counterparts. The CBS Sports gives Arkansas's transfer portal group a B. So not the worst grade, but certainly still some work to do, and maybe didn't land a huge bunch of marquee names, but still overall pretty good on what Ryan Silverfield is trying to build. How about over at Auburn? Byron Brown, he led the sport last season with 347 yards of total offense per game, and he is now the Auburn Tigers signal caller. The prolific dual threat quarterback is the best of 13 USF players to follow Alex Golesh to the SEC, and there's now hope for an offense that has been dormant as of late. Even though it lost a couple of studs from their receiving core, the offense and defensive lines are still question marks, but Alex Golesh and a group of newcomers that at the very least should prevent a dip this season. CBS Sports giving Alex Golesh a B+ for his portal class so far. How about over at Florida? John Sumrall bringing in Eric Singleton, an immediate upgrade at the receiver unit for Florida. It is up to first-time starter Aaron Philo at quarterback to make use of him. Philo is an excellent fit for the Gators at quarterback, considering he will rejoin forces with his former OC, Buster Faulkner, at Georgia Tech. There are a number of fun additions on that side of the ball that should help the Gators improve upon their Billy Napier-era woes. And look, it's John Sumrall. They're going to have a good defense, but got to get that offense up to par. How about over at Kentucky? Will Stein, he is poised to sign the best portal class Kentucky has ever seen. Given his track record as an elite offensive mind, it is not hard to see why so many top players on that side of the ball are set to become Kentucky Wildcats. The O-line got a major boost with Lance Hurd, Colton Price, Tigra Shabola, and that Stein pride away quarterback Kenny Minchie away from Nebraska after he committed to the Cornhuskers could prove to be a game changer for a program that is invigorated with new life. CBS Sports giving Kentucky and Will Stein an A- for their class so far. And lastly, the two that are right up at the top, an A for both of them so far. We'll start with Ole Miss. Not only did Pete Golding lead Ole Miss on a thrilling college football playoff run, but he also set himself up for success entering his first full season as the head coach. They currently have the number 2 ranked transfer portal class. He has quarterback and a former top 100 recruit Deuce Knight, and a number of ready-made SEC starters on the D-line, like 4-star or defensive side, like 4-star corner Jay Crawford, D-lineman Michael Barea, Jaheim Otis. If the majority of the newcomers hit, the Rebels might be right back in the playoff hunt, and particularly if they get that extra year out of Trinidad Chambliss like they're hoping, and Kevon Lacey back. Yeah, Ole Miss looks like they're going to be just fine now. Yeah, it's on Pete Golding to continue to develop into a good head coach, particularly an SEC head coach. And then lastly, they've got LSU right up there as well, giving them an A. And here's what they write. The Portal King lived up to his name. Lane Kiffin boasts the nation's top-ranked class by a mile. It starts with a 1-2 punch at quarterback that sets LSU up for success now and in the future, with Sam Leavitt stepping in as the starter for this year, and Hassan Longstreet arriving as the heir apparent. Whole host of tantalizing wide receivers are on board, which will help Kiffin and Weiss construct one of their patented high-flying offenses in year one. The expectation is for Kiffin to compete for national championships, and this portal class makes a statement that suggests that is very well possible in year one under Lane Kiffin. So again, however you want to divvy it up, 24/7 Sports, they got Ole Miss at number 2, LSU at number 1. CBS Sports gives them both a grade of an A so far for their portal classes. But yeah, look, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Nobody can sit still or wait for that September matchup between LSU and Ole Miss in Oxford coming up later this year. All right, before we get out of here, I wanted to throw this up real quick. I'm an SEC baseball honk, and it's fun to get super excited about what is to come for the upcoming season. Perfect Game, they put out their preseason top 25, and a lot of SEC teams in here. LSU at number 1, Tennessee at number 3, Alabama at number 4, Mississippi State number 5, Texas at number 8, Auburn at number 10, Florida at number 12, Georgia at number 15. So how many SEC teams is that? Half a dozen just in the top 15. So it's going to be a fun year. And of course, life post Tony Vitello at Tennessee. What does that look like? Going to be fun to watch that. And we're starting here real soon. Softball will get started up first week of February, and then into the second week of February, we'll have SEC baseball getting started. Going to be a lot of fun. Hey, thank you guys for tuning into Locked On SEC. Make sure you subscribe and follow us so you get all our latest episodes. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. You can get Locked On SEC ad-free, plus our members-only Discord access and more. All you got to do is head to lockedonsec.supercast.com to join the club. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Make sure you check us out on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC.